Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
We are on the national television and radio airwaves on Mark Dolan tonight. My Mark Meets guest is showbiz legend Christopher Biggins. In The Big Question, do we make too much of a fuss of mental health? Is it time for a return to the British stiff upper lip? In the news agenda, was Britain robbed at the Eurovision Song Contest last night? We will ask former Eurovision winner Bucks Fizz star Jay Aston. And should dangerous drivers face tougher punishment? Also, it's International Family Day. So does the family still matter? Tackling all of those topics are my brilliant panel. And in my big opinion monologue in just 2 minutes' time, the NHS is on life support and must change or die. And you need a heart of stone to begrudge Ukraine their victory last night in Eurovision. But we'll discuss that shortly with Christopher Biggins. A lively 2 hours to come. Remember, we don't do boring, not on my watch. First up, the very lively Polly Middlehurst with the headlines.
Mark, thank you. The top stories tonight. Finland and Sweden are on course to join NATO. Finland has confirmed it plans to apply for membership, and Sweden's ruling Democratic Party says it wants to follow suit. Prime Minister of Sweden, Magdalena Andersson, says her country would be left in a vulnerable position if it were the only country in the Baltic region that wasn't a member.
As a member of NATO, Sweden will not only achieve more security, but also contribute to more security. Within NATO, Sweden will be a security provider.
And NATO's Secretary-General is confident an agreement can be reached to allay Turkey's concerns about Finland and Sweden's plans to join the alliance. Jens Stoltenberg also called for more military support for Ukraine, saying he believes the country can win the war against Russia.
Russia's war in Ukraine is not going as Moscow had planned. They failed to take Kiev. They are pulling back from around Kharkiv.
Meanwhile, new video released by a pro-Russian separatist commander shows a shower of munitions falling over the Azovstal steelworks in the Ukrainian port city of Mariupol. It's not clear when the footage was taken, but Ukraine says the site, where hundreds of fighters are still holed up, is being constantly bombarded. Here, the DUP is warning that actions rather than words are needed from the government to break the Stormont stalemate. The Prime Minister is due to visit Northern Ireland tomorrow to speak to the main parties in a bid to restore power sharing. Tensions are building, though, between the UK and the EU over concerns Boris Johnson could try to introduce legislation to strip away elements of the Northern Ireland Protocol. In the United States, a teenage mass shooting suspect is on suicide watch, with authorities describing the attack as a racist hate crime. 18-year-old Peyton Gendron is accused of killing 10 people in a predominantly black neighbourhood in Buffalo, in the state of New York. Speaking at a ceremony to honour fallen police officers, President Biden condemned the attack.
We're still gathering the facts, but already the Justice Department has stated publicly that it is investigating the matter as a hate crime. racially motivated act of white supremacy and violent extremism.
Joe Biden. Well, in entertainment news, Ukraine's Eurovision Song Contest winners say they'll celebrate their success after the war. The Kalush Orchestra beat the UK's entry after receiving hundreds of points through the public televote. The group says the victory was for every Ukrainian. On TV, online and on your radio via DAB+, you're with GB News, and now it's time for Mark Dolan.
Good evening and welcome to Mark Dolan Tonight, and a cracking 2 hours of Sunday night entertainment we have in store for you. My Mark Meets guest is showbiz legend Christopher Biggins. Christopher will be talking about his life in Panto, working with Ronnie Barker, David Jason and Cilla Black, plus becoming the king of the jungle in I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here. He'll also share his views on woke culture and extreme political correctness, and his admiration for Margaret Thatcher. Mrs. Thatcher, of course, back in the news today with the arrival of her statue in Grantham. The definition of national treasure, Christopher Biggins, is live at 10. In the big question, do we make too much of a fuss of mental health? Is it time to return to the British stiff upper lip? Plus, in the news agenda, was Britain robbed at the Eurovision Song Contest last night? We'll ask former Eurovision winner, Bucks Fizz star Jay Aston. And should drivers who are dangerous or even kill people on the road face tougher punishment? And it's International Family Day, so does the family still matter? Tackling all of those topics and many more are my great panel tonight. With me throughout the show, the brilliant, marvellous Hattie McAndrew, who is a well-being and lifestyle guru. I feel better just having her with me in the studio. Great to have you on board. Thanks for joining us, Hattie. We also have TV presenting legend Tommy Sandu, broadcaster, podcaster, writer, comedian, a quadruple threat. And he looks good too. Speaking of which, a woman of substance, political commentator, broadcaster, and a good friend of mine, the one and only Emma Webb. There we are, we're travelling business class with my panel. Remember, we love to hear from you throughout the show. The best bit of my programme is when you get in touch. The email is mark@gbnews.uk. Now, this show has a golden rule. What is that rule? What is the golden rule of Mark Dolan Tonight? Well, we don't do boring. Not on my watch. I just won't have it. So, a lively 2 hours to come. You won't want to miss a second. Big stories, big guests, big debate and big opinions. Let's start with this one. The doctor won't see you now. Patients made 4.7 million trips to A&E because they couldn't get advice or treatment from their GP, according to the UK's health watchdog, the Care Quality Commission. What a disastrous consequence of our National Health Service becoming a national COVID service and effectively going on strike for 2 years. I, for one, will never forget the disgraceful images of GP surgeries literally bolted shut and photographs inside of empty waiting rooms. Just as the pathetic Church of England, under the leadership of Justin Welby, closed their doors to worshippers during the pandemic, our National Health Service literally turned away the sick. That's what I call unchristian. So here we are, with a waiting list of 6 million people, which some fear will hit 12 million, all because of a bonkers policy of pursuing zero COVID in healthcare settings. In my view, a disastrous and dangerous waste of time. The virus was everywhere and tore through every hospital. The futile attempt by the National Health Service to control COVID saw anaesthetists, surgeons and nurses sat at home twiddling their thumbs for 2 weeks at a time because they'd been in contact with someone that tested positive for COVID. Go figure, you work in a hospital. For 2 years, thousands of symptom-free healthcare workers spent weeks at home, self-isolating, baking banana bread, watching Netflix, and having Zoom wine tastings as Rome burned. The economic bill for lockdowns is now coming through in the cost of living crisis, which is in fact the cost of lockdown crisis. But the even more tragic health bill is heading our way. The NHS's cultural obsession with COVID, which continues with the enforcement of worthless masks in hospitals and clinics, has likely cost many more lives than it has saved. And let's talk about whose lives are actually more important. Does a clinically vulnerable 88-year-old with weeks or months to live have equal billing with a 30-year-old mother of two with the rest of her life ahead of her who didn't get that lump in her breast checked because she couldn't get an appointment and must now say goodbye to her family? Doctors have always made tough decisions in terms of prioritising treatment, but all of that went out of the window during this pandemic. The number of people that told me via email on this show and previously on my radio programme that if it's not COVID, they don't care. Well, I lost count of the number of people that said that. That was the message from the NHS for 2 years. If it's not COVID, they don't care. And the COVID zealots in the NHS, high-profile doctors, many on Twitter with 500,000 followers, are now calling for more investment in the NHS, except that it's the policies which they pushed for which smashed the economy, which means the cupboard is now bare. Thousands of people are now going private, even though they can't afford it, because they've been told they've got to wait years for a hip replacement or other essential treatment that the NHS calls non-urgent. I beg your pardon. If it's causing you pain, if it's affecting your quality of life or your ability to work, it is urgent. Plus, we pay our taxes. In fact, now more than we have done since the 1950s. So it's time for the NHS to raise its game and give the British public a bit more bang for our buck. GPs, for example, should be working 7 days a week, night and day, on their fat salaries to see patients face to face. And hospitals and other medical settings need to get back to normal, reach full capacity, and get over the fact that COVID-19 cannot and will not be controlled. Virus gonna virus. And what's the problem with Omicron? A variant milder than a night on the tiles with Mary Berry. She loves getting baked. And the NHS, they want to have their cake and eat it as well. Unprecedented spending, but a service that just doesn't match up. Britain deserves a better health service, and as far as I'm concerned, all bets are off in terms of how we actually achieve that. Free healthcare for all at the point of need is an absolute deal breaker, a red line for me. You don't want to be at the scene of an accident or halfway through a coronary incident and be asked for your credit card. Absolutely. America's healthcare system is an absolute disaster, costing US taxpayers twice the money for a service half as good. But the NHS itself is now on life support. It's in need of urgent resuscitation. And if bringing in vast amounts of private expertise to save lives and improve lives, well, if that needs to happen, then so be it. I'm happy to debate the way forward for our National Health Service. It's time for an honest national conversation. But plot spoiler, I suspect endless money is not the answer. One thing is clear, keeping things as they are is not an option. Let's not forget that this health service, which is now understaffed, of course, huge staffing pressure, well, they were happy to see thousands of doctors, nurses and care workers fired for not having a vaccine that many of them statistically didn't need. And the NHS has become the national ill health service, managing preventable lifestyle conditions like type 2 diabetes and obesity rather than tackling them. They say they have schemes to tackle obesity, but it's not working. We're fatter and sicker than ever. COVID proved that. Joint problems, dementia, heart disease, cancer and depression are all linked to obesity, which the NHS is happy to spend billions expensively managing. Mark my words, obesity will eventually bankrupt the NHS if we don't deal with it. Now, the people in the NHS, the frontline nurses, doctors, porters and cleaners are the very best we have. Expertise, commitment and what they've been through over the last 2 years has been close to hell. We will never thank them enough. But as a wider organisation, the NHS is on its deathbed. It's a scandal that people are borrowing money, taking out loans and using their credit cards to get health treatment privately. Why are they doing that? This is treatment that they've already paid for via their taxes. The pandemic has been transformative in many ways. Society will never be the same. And I've noticed that goodwill towards the National Health Service itself is now in short supply. That's a significant change in the last 2 years. Abuse is completely unacceptable, of course, but anger and frustration is understandable. And I think the health service has only brought this on itself. I fear the NHS will become a bit like the BBC, a public organisation you're forced to pay for, but which millions don't actually use. The NHS needs to be placed on a waiting list for change. My prescription is that we rethink the whole model and start again. If the NHS doesn't choose change, change will be forced upon it. Our health service is on life support. Carry on doctor isn't an option. Now that's what I call a turn up for the books. Britain coming second in the Eurovision Song Contest and receiving the maximum 12 points from Germany and France. Now, there were many reasons why we did so well, primarily the extraordinary performance of Sam Ryder and an uplifting song called Spaceman. I mean, yes, he could have done with a trip to the barbers, but hey, who am I to talk? And we've had 2 years of lockdown. I mean, that's a lockdown hairdo, isn't it? But what a great guy. Last night was a celebration of his great talents and his joyous, inspiring, uplifting performance in that diamante jumpsuit. I've got no doubt Primark will be selling those in about a week's time. But it also felt like a moment in which Europe forgave Britain for Brexit. Let's be honest, this stopped being a singing competition years ago, and the dire scores for the UK since 2016 have clearly been politically motivated. But the fact that some of our great European rivals, with whom we've had differences over the last few years, gave us points, suggests a degree of water under the bridge. So Germany and France, danke schön et merci bien. And it's my belief that we are now just a few years away from our next Eurovision victory. We've done it 5 times. Number 6 is coming. Last night was all about the positives. And whilst Britain was clearly the real winner, who could begrudge the Ukrainians their victory? You'd need a heart of stone not to be pleased for the band and their lead singer, the owner of the world's largest fishing hat, for their wonderful victory. What a guy, what a talent. And here's the thing, the result last night was a morale boost for the people of Ukraine, as well as sending a message to ordinary Ukrainians that we've got their back and that they will prevail over this evil invasion. Russia, of course, didn't get the memo, with bombs aimed at Ukrainian cities this morning being labelled with references to last night's win. Take a look at this. So you've got Russian bombs, and they're referencing Eurovision last night. How low can they stoop? Perhaps they're still angry at being left out of this year's competition. There you go. 0 point for Russia. So Britain and Ukraine were both winners last night for different reasons. Given the horror that's now playing out in Mariupol and elsewhere, their victory was far more important than ours. But there was a positive message for this country too, reflected in the lyrics of our brilliant song, Spaceman. The sky's the limit for global Britain. And it seems like we've got our voice back. In full voice tonight is my fabulous panel, lifestyle coach Hattie McAndrew, podcast and TV presenter Tommy Sandu, and political commentator Emma Webb. Emma, let me start with you. We're going to talk about Eurovision later with none other than Jay Aston, who won Eurovision with Bucks Fizz, and Christopher Biggins. So let's talk about the NHS. Does it need a rethink?
I think it does. I think we've made a huge mistake over the past couple of decades when talking about this publicly. We often talk as if the only alternative is the American model, which is simply untrue. There are many fantastic models all across Europe and the developed world that are free at the point of entry in the same way that the NHS is, but work more efficiently. And actually, studies have shown repeatedly the NHS has failed on patient outcomes. And I think that the coronavirus pandemic has shown just how urgent the need for reform is. This is something that has touched my life personally over the last couple of years, the fact that people have been unable to get treatment and have therefore suffered the consequences. And there will be many very upset, very angry people across the country who will be living with the consequences of this possibly for a lifetime. And I think, as you said in your monologue there, Mark, it's completely outrageous that people are having to take out loans and use money on their credit card to get operations that they have really already paid for through their taxes. I think that's abhorrent, and it is the ultimate sign that the NHS desperately needs reform. And
as an organisation, the NHS did become obsessed with COVID, ignoring other illnesses, and that's not the case across Europe. The NHS was an outlier in pursuing something akin to a zero COVID policy, which I don't think was possible given the extraordinarily transmissible nature of the virus.
Absolutely, and I think but that is ultimately more a question of the government's approach, actually, though I don't know exactly what the statistics are on the ways that other healthcare services have performed in other countries, but this has been a problem that's been going on for a very long time. The NHS has faced multiple crises long before the coronavirus pandemic, where they've shown themselves incapable of being able to deal even with outbreaks of flu. And so this is something that really, for a very long time, has been begging for public attention, but we haven't been able to talk about it. So in many ways, the coronavirus pandemic has actually possibly handed us an opportunity to discuss this in a way that we haven't been able to discuss it before.
Tommy Sandu, has the pandemic accelerated issues that the NHS always had?
I think so. Probably fast-tracked problems that were probably bubbling underneath for several years. I can only think from personal experience. I don't know the systems or the policies or what goes into all this, Mark, but when I think about like my dad, who needed a cataract operation recently, went via the NHS. The wait time was so great. His uncomfort and discomfort levels were so great that he went private. Now, fortunately, he was in a position that he could do that, but having to pay £11,000 is something that he chose to do because he just couldn't wait any longer.
But the point, Tommy, is that he's already paid his taxes.
He's 75 years old, he's lived there since he was 10.
Your dear dad is paying twice.
I agree, but what do you do? In that situation, do you carry on living in pain? And, you know, if he is in a position to cover himself, he did, to get himself out of that pain. And also, I heard this week there was another gentleman, a friend of mine, whose dad needed a stent put into his heart, and he went private to pay £30,000 himself. They've contributed. That operation should have probably happened under the NHS. But, you know, they couldn't. The wait times are too great. And people, you know, life's short. People want to live their life and carry on living their life. If COVID taught us anything, we just want to get back to living. Yeah, I mean, Tommy, I don't want to get involved in this toxic debate about, you know, should the NHS be privatised or not privatised. I don't care. Tommy Sandu, I don't care how we do it. All right? Don't bore me. I'm like Boris Johnson. Don't bog me down with the detail. No. OK? Just give me a paragraph on what we're going to do, how we're going to use those taxes. I don't think money is the only aspect. Of course, money's part of it. But I just think any which way to deliver a better service for the public, to address lifestyle issues like type 2 diabetes. And I think maybe the whole point, Tommy, is that it mustn't be a taboo now to discuss the future of the NHS. Yeah. I agree. And also, I mean, I know it's hard because then you quickly get into potentially criticising great work that great doctors and nurses are doing. Sure. And I know they're overworked and I know the hours are crazy. But ultimately, we're at the receiving end of it. Like you say, we've paid our taxes and we just want a better system for the doctors and the nurses and also for us as people. So something's got to happen, Mark. And someone in positions of power has got to do something like yesterday. I think that's right. I mean, Hattie McAndrew, you know, I said in my big opinion monologue that my red line is that we have a health service that's free at the point of need for all citizens. The American system is an absolute nightmare. But obviously something's got to happen, hasn't it? 4.7 million people in this country, Hattie, going to A&E, and it's not an emergency, but they've got an issue that's a health problem the GP won't see them for.
Yeah, I think, you know, that number, 4.7 million, it's crazy and it's really scary that we've got to that point. And like you said, you know, I don't think this is a time for us to start being bogged down in the details and blaming people. And, you know, it's now time to have this conversation, everyone to come together. And like Tommy said, the people who are in positions of power need to look at what's happening, look at these figures, you know, take a really good look at the A&E about, you know, the whole system and really come together now to find a solution that works for people, because our nurses, our doctors, you know, they're brilliant. They're doing an amazing job. They've done an amazing job over the pandemic and no one can ever take that away from them. And what we don't want to do is turn this into a conversation about, you know, the staff and that they're not performing the best that they can. So it's how can we support them to do their jobs brilliantly, to look after us like they have done so well for so many years? What do we need to do now to help that move forward and support them as best we can?
Well, Hattie, we've probably got the best doctors and nurses on God's earth.
Yeah.
And the hospital porters and the cleaners and the cooks. You know, it's a remarkable thing, the biggest employer in Europe. There will be thousands of people that work in the NHS watching this programme, but I'm very concerned about the system. I think if it's kind of, you know, albatross time and we stick our heads in the sand, things are only going to get worse. I do believe that if we ignore the issues around the NHS, people will die, sickness won't be treated, and I believe it will ultimately bankrupt itself. Just a thought, Hattie, in terms of what people have been through. I mean, have you or your family been impacted by access to health services in the last couple of years?
I'm very lucky to say no, they haven't. I wasn't personally directly impacted and my family weren't either. But obviously, like everyone else in the world and in the country, you know, a lot of people close to us are friends of. We've seen the impact of it and it is terrifying. But like you said, this isn't now the time to start burying our heads in the sand or, you know, blaming people or pointing the fingers. It's now, OK, let's look at what's going on. Let's look at the facts and let's move forward. And what does that mean? It's how we're going to... Like you said, we've got the most amazing doctors, amazing nurses, amazing porters, everyone who works for the NHS. How are we going to keep them there? If they're overworked, they're underpaid, they're exhausted, what's going to stop them from going private? What do we need to do to keep the system afloat? Because otherwise it's going to sink. Briefly,
Hattie, lots of people will disagree with my point about the NHS pursuing zero COVID, but I spoke to lots of top medics, including retired NHS surgeon Dr. Anthony Hinton. And early in the pandemic, he was mystified that healthy, symptom-free doctors, nurses, surgeons, anaesthetists, paediatricians were self-isolating at home without symptoms because they'd been pinged by their phone. They'd had contact with someone that had COVID. Now, as I said in the monologue, well, they work in a hospital. COVID's everywhere. I don't think that anybody that worked in the NHS that didn't have symptoms should have stayed home. It's a view that not many people have taken in the course of this pandemic. It's my strongly held view. What's yours on that?
To be honest, I think that a lot of these conversations around the pandemic and what happened during it, we're now able to have them retrospectively. So I think it's really easy for us to sit here and look back and say, you know, we should have done this, we shouldn't have done that, because now we have the stats, we have the figures, we have the, you know, we've been through it, we've lived through it, we've been through those experiences. I think at the time, people just did the best they could. And I think that everyone was, or most people were, following guidelines, doing as they were told, and just, you know, trying to get through. So I don't know what was right or wrong, but I know that it's easy to retrospectively think, oh, this is what we should have done or shouldn't have done differently.
Hattie McAndrew, great to have you on the show. The first of many appearances. Lifestyle coach Hattie Andrew joining us on Mark Dolan tonight for the first time. And two very, very good friends of mine, Tommy Sandu, comedian and broadcaster, and political commentator Emma Webb. They will return. And let's be honest, they've got lots to get through because in our news agenda with my panel later in the show, should dangerous drivers face tougher punishment? Did you see that terrible story of a woman killed in London yesterday, and 3 dogs killed as well? She was a dog walker because of a dangerous driver. So what do we do with these monsters? Should we lock them up and throw away the key? Also, was the UK robbed at last night's Eurovision? We'll speak to Jay Aston from Bucks Fizz on the show. How often should you wash your hair? And does the family still matter? So much to get through. It's all about your opinions. Mark at gbnews.uk. Christopher Biggins live in the studio for Mark Meets at 10. And after this, in the big question, do we make too much of a fuss of mental health? See you shortly.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Does the NHS need a rethink? Astonishing statistics in the paper today. 4.7 million people going to A&E for regular non-urgent treatment because they can't see the GP. That's not great news if you've been in a car crash or broken your leg, is it? Joining that queue in the accident and emergency department. Well, the emails are flooding in to mark@gbnews.uk. Janice says, Mark, the NHS does need a revamp, but it needs to start from the top to the bottom. It wasn't the NHS who became the National COVID Service, but Sage made it happen, and so did Matt Hancock. I personally need to see a doctor, but can't. So maybe by September, a letter will be written to the present health minister and to my GP surgery. Well, look, Janice, I'm really sorry to hear that you're poorly, and I do hope you get swift treatment. How about this from Betty? In Dorset. Hi, Betty. What a gorgeous, lovely name. If I had a daughter, I think I'd call her Betty. I've got two sons. You can't win them all. Betty says, Dear Mark, pre-COVID, I needed a cataract operation in both eyes. I saw my optician and he wrote to the GP. The GP referred me to hospital. The initial appointment was for a future time of 9 weeks. And if the hospital decides the cataracts were bad enough, there would be a further wait of 18 months. I was able to pay, so had both eyes done privately. The NHS has needed reform for many years. Throwing money at it will not solve its problems. Betty, keep them coming. I also want to hear from you if you don't agree and you think that actually we've got the right system in terms of how the NHS is run, and perhaps you just think it does need a bit more cashola. It's all about opinions. All are welcome. mark@gbnews.uk. Christopher Biggins, live in the studio at 10. That's right, it's #Biggins Day. But let's crack on and talk about mental health now, because today is the end of Mental Health Awareness Week, a campaign designed to focus on psychological well-being, set up by the Mental Health Foundation. Now, whilst serious mental health issues must be addressed, has our strong focus on mental health gone too far? Has it been weaponised by those who seek to duck out of life's responsibilities? And is there any value in the traditional British stiff upper lip? That's tonight's big question. Do we make too much of a fuss of mental health? Has it become an obsession? Well, to debate this, I'm delighted to welcome US-based TV personality and a best-selling author and speaker who is known as America's psychiatrist, Dr. Carol Lieberman, MD. We're also joined by former national newspaper editor and now highly respected media commentator, Neil Wallace, and lifestyle coach and a member of our panel tonight, Hattie McAndrew. Hattie, let me start with you. Is the issue around mental health overblown?
No. It's absolutely not. And I find it so scary and confusing that we're still having these debates and these conversations because, in my view, no, we don't make too much fuss over mental health. If anything, it needs to be taken more seriously. There needs to be more education, more research, more understanding into what is happening, because we are, the mental health, the state of mental health, it's a wave and it's crashing now, and it's really, this is our time to take it seriously and to start understanding what is going on.
Hattie, I'm with you about real mental health issues. But what about those moaning minis? People who are basically just a bit gloomy. Maybe they've got a parking ticket or they've got, an energy bill they don't like the look of. Life was always difficult. People have always suffered.
Life is always difficult. People have always suffered. And yes, there will be people who will moan about having a parking ticket and having a bad day. But, as a society, it's not our place to say who does and who doesn't have mental health issues or mental illnesses. And I think that's what we need to be so careful of, is stopping people from feeling like they can express what they're feeling or what's wrong, and really give people, the chance to work out, what is wrong with them and help them understand, educate them. Maybe you're having a bad day, maybe you're showing signs of depression. And by stifling that and telling people to man up or to stop wallowing in those feelings is so counterproductive for society, for people, for young people.
Well, Hattie, I know you've had huge success with your clients as a lifestyle coach, so we'll get you to give out your details of what you do before the end of this conversation. Someone else that's also a professional in this field is America's psychiatrist, Dr. Carol Lieberman. Dr. Lieberman, do you think that there's a difference between serious mental illness and people who have the mental equivalent of hypochondria?
Well, yes, I think we do have to make a distinction. This is, in fact, one of the worst times, if not the worst time, for kids to grow up. There is so much happening in the world, just like we've all fallen down the rabbit hole in Alice in Wonderland. So, they do have a lot to deal with. And yes, I think it would be great to try to find people, kids earlier, in earlier grades who are going down the wrong path in terms of developing some kind of mental illness. But that is different from snowflakes. There is this other, group of people who are offended at anything. If they don't like their job, they just quit it. If you don't use the right pronoun, then they get offended. And if you don't have a safe room in school for them to do coloring, they get all upset. So that, now, in a way, you could call that in itself this obsession with all of these things, these entitlements that they have. You could call that a mental illness. Maybe we need to have a new category in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual for snowflakes.
Yes, Neil Wallace, you've edited several national newspapers. You're an icon of Fleet Street. Several decades as a newspaper man. That must have tested your mental health.
I'm not sure I've got any mental health, to be honest. I think that got up and left the room a while ago. What I do have, though, in that experience and over the period of time is seeing a huge industry, an incredibly lucrative industry has developed about this obsession with mental illness. Now, I have mental illness in my family. It is a terrible illness when it genuinely strikes. But frankly, an awful lot of what is now called mental illness is being fed up, is being down because the world hasn't gone your way. It's being teased off that you didn't get the promotion. It is being stressed. You know what? People have had stress for thousands of years, and stress is basically nature's way of preparing you to deal with trouble. And, you hear about the idea that we all have to give everybody a cuddle. The truth of the matter is this, that huge amount of the business that the lifestyle lady deals with is because so many people say, you have a problem. You haven't got a problem, you've got a difficulty, and they're different. And what we need to face up to is the more that you tell, for instance, students that they are going to be at risk of their mental health by hearing somebody come to their university and tell them something that they may disagree with, the more that difficulty is going to happen, you are guaranteeing yourself some future clients. You are guaranteeing yourself an industry that absolutely loves itself. And as I say, I've experienced serious mental illness within my family. I know how serious it is, but I've also seen an awful lot of stuff that, frankly, people just have to get through life. We are living a golden era now. You've gone back, if you think about what's happening in somewhere like Ukraine at the moment, my parents experiencing in the Second World War, that stresses. We have a different kind of stress now. And, you know, labeling all this as mental illness, when in fact it is just mental stress and strain, and you just got to get through it.
Hattie, setting aside clinical depression, and that's something that you should certainly see your GP about, do reach out, help is always there. But aside from clinical or severe depression, bipolar disorder, that sort of thing, the bottom line is that life has always been difficult. Get over it.
OK, but if that's the bottom line, then why are suicide rates so high? Why is it one of the biggest killers for young men? Why, you know, where do these illnesses come from? They don't stem from nowhere. They don't stem from nothing.
Because of people like you.
Because of people like me.
Like you are telling people how difficult life is, how stressed they are, how awful everything is. The truth of the matter is that there's always been strains on people. They're constantly being told these strains are irreconcilable. And the truth of the matter is many of them can be dealt with. It's constantly playing on the idea that stress is an illness. It isn't. Not always.
Well,
I mean, Carol, come back to you, Hattie.
Yeah.
Carol?
Yes, it is true. When we look at our parents and grandparents and great-grandparents, I mean, you know, for example, my grandfather came to America from Austria, and his father died, and he had to walk to school in the snow, and he sold newspapers in the street because he had to make money for his family, and all of that kind of thing. Can you imagine telling a child these days, go out and sell newspapers so you can make some money for your family? I mean, you have to be tougher. You know, again, of course, as a psychiatrist, of course, I'm not going to say that mental illness, you know, we don't have to take care of mental illness and we don't have to, you know, try to help people as soon as possible. But that's not really the majority. Mental illness is not the problem for the majority of people who are just, you know, sort of whimpering and wanting life to be easier. Now, there are a lot of reasons why, you know, there are a lot of tough things going on in the world, from violent protests in the streets and, you know, well, of course, the COVID lockdowns and people turning to the internet and getting radicalized, like the young man in Buffalo, you know, with the mass shooting. I mean, there are lots of different problems, but we have to get tougher and we have to do something about it. In other words, instead of like sitting at home and saying, oh my goodness, you know, there's gas is expensive and so I can't go all the places I want. I mean, you need to do something to help the world, make the world better. Do something, go out and get money to donate to the Ukrainians. You can fix problems, but not to just sit there and whimper and wait for mommy and daddy to give you a tissue.
Now, Hattie McAndrew, I'm going to jump into your defence because you are a lifestyle coach. You're not a psychotherapist. I don't think you've told anyone that they're mentally ill. In fact, I know you've got many, many happy clients. But what is your response to what you've heard there from Neil and from Carol?
I mean, honestly, I don't really know where to start. It feels like a massive part of this problem is a generational gap. And I think that both of you have grown up in a very different world and you've grown up with very different stresses, very different problems. And I think a big part of this discussion, this debate of mental health versus mental illness, whose right is it to say what's right or wrong, comes from that age gap, comes from the fact that you possibly don't understand what it's like, what these young people are facing, what they're dealing with every single day.
Absolutely not.
Carol?
I mean, you know, I'm a psychiatrist. I treat patients every day, of all ages. I know what's going on in the world. So it has nothing to do with that. I mean, yes, you know, you can look at generations back and say that they were tougher in ways. They went through World War I, they went through World War II, all of these different stressors. They went through the Depression, you know, all of that. But that's the issue. You know, why is it that kids, little kids or teenagers, why are they millennials? Why are they having this sense of entitlement? And it's something that needs to be fixed, whether you want to call it a mental illness or not, but it needs to be fixed. They need to start thinking about the rest of the world, because the rest of the world is in deep trouble.
Let's bring my panel in, if I can. We've got Emma Webb, who is a political commentator, and broadcaster, radio and TV host Tommy Sandu. Emma, this is a fairly divisive conversation. Where do you stand on this one? We're just going to get a shot to Emma right now. Yeah, Emma, your reaction to this conversation?
Is a really, really horrible thing when it happens, because if something is in your head, it feels like it's much more out of your control than if it was just, you know, a physical ailment. And I recognise that mental illness is a very horrible thing. But I think the difference is a difference in approach to mental illness. So the difference really between, I think, what some people would regard as an indulgent approach and another approach which is more stoical. And I don't agree with the implication that this is necessarily a generational thing, though there might be generational elements to it. I think there's a class element to this as well. I certainly don't agree. I think I would take a far more stoic approach to this issue. And I do think that actually amongst my own generation, a stiff upper lip would be helpful in many ways. And as I say, I'm not saying that mental illness isn't something that isn't important, that we shouldn't discuss it and that it's something that should be stigmatised. But I also do think that there is a lot to be said for the old-fashioned stoic philosophy-based approach that actually informs cognitive behavioural therapy, and that can be very useful in actually helping to get people out of that situation.
But Emma Webb, weren't that stiff upper lip generation just miserable inside?
I don't think so. And like I say, I don't think that this is a generational thing, because I think it depends on the sort of group that you're a part of. I think that, you know, amongst certain groups, perhaps that's less popular, but certainly amongst my own generation, there are people who still believe that, and I'm saying a stiff upper lip. When I talk about stoicism, I don't mean suppressing your emotions and being hard on the outside but dying on the inside. I mean an approach to life that is based on handling the things that you can handle and setting aside the things that you can't, and recognising the differences between those things. And there have been many people who have written in very important books about a stoic approach to mental health and to lifestyle and so on in recent years. And I think that is something that many people that I know have found very beneficial. So I don't think that painting stoicism or painting the stiff upper lip as being this generational thing that is you know, exclusive to older people and is associated with being, you know, stern on the outside but actually crumbling on the inside. I don't think that that's an accurate portrayal at all.
Tommy Sandu, we've seen celebrities going public about their mental health issues as well. Is it a good thing?
So much of being a celebrity now is living in an outward life in terms of social media, using social media and your followers to interact. I got cancelled. I got cancelled from the BBC 5 years ago. It was a horrible, horrible thing to go through. I spent 2 years being very sad, feeling very sorry for myself. I didn't tweet about all that. I didn't go on Instagram about all that, because I saw the reaction that celebrities or people that have a following get, and everyone's very reassuring and they tell you how much they love you and you get that back. But for me, that's what my family's there for. And, you know, my wife supported me, my kids were there for me, my parents were there for me, and they got me through what has been described as, you know, tough times. I went through difficult times. Was it mental health? Did it affect my mental health? Of course it did. Did it get me down? Of course it did. But it was actually my wife that took the stoic approach. And after 2 years of me feeling very sorry for myself, crying my eyes out at some points as well, she said, look, you got to get on with it. You just have to now get on with it. And I was fortunate, actually, because I was blessed to have friends that didn't take me down the pub to drink and, you know, myself into with the downness. They said, let's go down the gym. Let's go for a run. Let's have a workout, which is how I dealt with it. But, you know, if you look back over generations, I think it's why many men and women spent all their evenings in the pub. That was how they dealt with the stresses and the troubles of life. So these problems have existed for hundreds of years, if not thousands of years. There's always been some kind of stress. I'm sure the caveman had many stresses back in the day. But now we're becoming more aware of it. I think we've evolved as a human species. We're more aware of what these tensions and problems are. I think we are in danger of labelling them too much. And there's probably a balance to become aware of it, but equipping youngsters with the tools to deal with it and getting on with it.
Apologies to Neil and Carol. We're clean out of time. Hattie McAndrew, as you've been slightly outnumbered, let's let you have the last word. First of all, how can people find out about what you do and decide whether you're part of an industry or not?
If they would like to decide, I'm at hattiemcandrews.com and Hattie_McAndrews on Instagram.
Brilliant. And what are your closing thoughts on this? We've only got a few seconds, but what are your final thoughts?
Closing thoughts are, whether you like it or not, this is a very real thing. It's a very real problem. If you look at the number of people who are affected, who are ending their own lives, who are ending up hospitalised, whatever your thoughts on it, something has to change. And I think that's conversation, it's education, it's people starting to take it seriously, because even if you think it's the stupidest thing in the world, it's very real and it's here, and it's time that we took it seriously.
And I've just found your website, hattiemcandrews.com. Neil, what a treat to see you again, and Carol as well. Please come back soon. Two very good friends of the show. Former national newspaper editor, a legend of Fleet Street, Neil Wallace. He's now a media commentator and a very good friend of mine, live from the United States, America's psychiatrist. You need help, you go see that lady if you can afford it. Dr. Carol Lieberman. Carol, catch up soon. More from my panel very shortly. Christopher Biggins is live in the studio at 10 o'clock. What a life, what a career in showbiz. Also, he's a big fan of Margaret Thatcher. We'll find out why. We'll talk about his politics. We'll talk about comedy, working with Cilla Black, Ronnie Barker, all of the comedy legends. And also, for my brilliant panel, we've got our news agenda questions. Next up, should dangerous drivers face tougher penalties? How far would you go? We'll discuss that after this.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Well, a very big reaction to my big opinion monologue. It's all about the NHS. 4.7 million people have been going to A&E just for non-urgent treatment because they can't see their GP. My brilliant colleague George in our digital department has crafted that into a monologue, which you can now find as a video on Twitter at gbnews.uk. You can see it on YouTube as well. But this from Tez. Good evening, Mark. Great monologue as always. Cannot disagree with anything you say. We need normality now in the NHS. GPs need to face reality and get on with getting back to normal and to save lives. It's our time now to introduce the working man's mantra to our GPs. Get off your arses, get us checked, save lives. Well, that's from Tez, and that's quite a slogan, isn't it? You are a creative bunch, let me tell you. And on the big question, is mental health overblown? Maria says, we all have mental health, Mark. At times, it's just the situation you're in at that time. You feel miserable and can't have what you want. Maria, thanks for that. If you disagree, though, and think that society actually reports and doesn't reflect enough on mental health, do let me know, mark@gbnews.uk. The most awful story for you now. A woman and her 3 dogs tragically died after they were hit by a car in Chelsea in London earlier this week. I believe it happened yesterday. A 26-year-old man has been arrested on suspicion of causing death by dangerous driving. It comes in the same week that judges were given the power to sentence drivers who kill to life behind bars. That's after a campaign started by the parents of a 4-year-old girl who was killed by a driver speeding in a stolen car. Despite killing the toddler, he was given just 9 years and 4 months in prison. Of course, he'll get out halfway through that sentence. From now on, dangerous drivers can be sentenced to a maximum of life imprisonment. It comes days after a teenager pleaded guilty to causing the death of 2 people by dangerous driving in Leighton Buzzard, and another driver who was charged with causing the death of a 62-year-old in Falmouth. But are the sentences enough? Will they work? What do we do to crack down on dangerous drivers? Tommy?
Look, it's... I think it needs to be clamped down. I think there needs to be more measures in place. There needs to be more cameras. I think that if you monitor people's driving, if people feel like there is no getting away with it. When I'm on the motorway, I want to drive at 80 or 90 miles an hour. 70 feels a bit slow, all right? I'm just being honest. And then when the speed restrictions come in, when I see the camera saying speed restrictions, we're monitoring you, tough. I have to stick with that speed restriction. I have to stick with that much. So I think having those parameters in place, having the potential fines in place, ticketing in place, will stop people becoming idiots. And I'm always in danger of being an idiot, Mark. I'm a whisker away.
Never.
I am. I tread the fine line. But with cars, you realise that actually one split second of being an idiot and is someone's life in danger. Only 2 weeks ago, we had a party for my wife. My DJ from the party was getting into the car and he was hit. The car was hit by a speeding driver. Only it was at midnight, he went around the corner a bit too quick, hit his car, the car door hit my DJ friend. It's just speeding, and not only that car, he's probably about 40 and a 30. But the impact on the DJ was, broken rib, impact to his body, who knows what kind of long-term damage as well. So it feels very real to me. It feels like I saw the driver, I met the driver, he was shooken up, he was a young guy, he wasn't drinking or anything like that, but he was in bits, because he'd made a split-second mistake. So I get that there needs to be hard punishment, but equally, we're all capable of making mistakes. It's a tricky one. People have lost their lives. What do we do in that situation? Because it's a mistake that has led to that.
Well, is dangerous driving a mistake? It's not the same as careless driving, is it?
Yeah.
Hattie?
Yeah, I think there's a big difference. I think, yes, sometimes it is a mistake, and an accident happens, but also a lot of the time it's alcohol, it's someone's texting on their phone, it's someone's lighting a cigarette or they're playing their music and they're not concentrating. Is that a mistake? No. And, a lot of the time that can lead to a speeding fine or, at best a minor accident. But when that comes to taking someone's life and, like that awful accident yesterday with the woman and her dogs, like that's so horrifying and it's so avoidable. And I think that's why it's so frustrating that it happens so often, because it doesn't need to be like that. It's careless, it's irresponsible.
Well, that's right. And I think this reckless driving, we've got that expression manslaughter, Emma, which I find too innocuous. In a sense, it's murder. You've killed someone with a weapon, which is a car.
Yeah, I think, the distinction between manslaughter and murder is that manslaughter is less intended, less premeditated. And if you have a car accident, even if you're driving dangerously, that probably is still manslaughter rather than murder unless it's premeditated.
You've gone very soft lately, do you know
that?
Emma Webb's gone woke.
Never.
Woke Webb.
But I guess the question is whether having longer sentences will actually be effective in deterring people. What would be effective because people drive like maniacs, and is the potential of somebody having a life sentence going to deter them more than what the previous sentence went up to 14 years. I don't know how aware people are of what the sentences are for death by dangerous driving, and even that we have a whole raft of things that are illegal, including texting while you're in the phone is a separate offence.
Yeah.
So
okay.
I think it depends on what's going to actually deter people from driving like idiots and knowing the difference between careless driving and dangerous driving.
What is an adequate sentence for someone that kills in their car through dangerous driving? What do you think, Mark, at gbnews.uk? In just a couple of minutes' time, live in the studio, showbiz legend, the one and only Christopher Biggins, taking your questions. So get to that, plus my news agenda and much more. See you shortly.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
He's in the building, folks. That's right. It is #Biggins Day. Coming up on Mark Dolan tonight, my Mark Meets guest is the definition of a British national treasure. Comedian, actor, TV presenter. We all love the guy. And he joins us tonight live in the studio, Christopher Biggins. In the news agenda with my panel, we'll be asking, was Britain robbed at last night's Eurovision? And we'll put that question to former Eurovision winner Jay Aston of Bucks Fizz. And, of course, Biggins as well will have strong views on that one. It's also International Family Day, so is the family still important? Plus, James Corden has exclusively revealed that he only washes his hair once every 2 months. So how often should you be washing your barnets? We'll discuss that and other burning issues of the day later this hour. Lots to get through. And so keep those emails coming in, mark@gbnews.uk. An explosive hour to come. You won't want to miss it. Biggins is here. First up, the other queen of showbiz, Polly Middlehurst.
Mark, thank you. The top story tonight. Finland and Sweden are on course to join NATO. Finland has confirmed it plans to apply for membership, and Sweden's ruling Democratic Party says it wants to follow suit. Prime Minister Magdalena Andersson says Sweden would be left in a vulnerable position if it were the only country in the Baltic region that wasn't a member.
As a member of NATO, Sweden will not only achieve more security, but also contribute to more security. Within NATO, Sweden will be a security provider.
Meanwhile, NATO's Secretary-General is confident an agreement can be reached to allay Turkey's concerns about Finland and Sweden's plans to join the alliance. Jens Stoltenberg also called for more military support for Ukraine, saying he believes the country can win the war against Russia.
Russia's war in Ukraine is not going as Moscow had planned. They failed to take Kiev. They are pulling back from around Kharkiv.
Here, the Prime Minister says there'll be a necessity to act if the UK and the EU fails to reach a compromise over the Northern Ireland Protocol. Boris Johnson also warned the government will set out its next steps in the coming days if the EU doesn't come to the table. He's due to travel to Belfast for emergency talks tomorrow in a bid to restore power sharing. In the United States, a teenage mass shooting suspect is on suicide watch, with authorities describing the attack as a racist hate crime. 18-year-old Peyton Gendron is accused of killing 10 people in a predominantly black neighbourhood in Buffalo in the state of New York. Speaking at a ceremony to honour the fallen police officers, President Biden condemned the act.
We're still gathering the facts, but already the Justice Department has stated publicly that it is investigating the matter as a hate crime, racially motivated act of white supremacy and violent extremism.
Here, the Queen received a standing ovation at a star-studded event marking the last day of the Royal Windsor Horse Show. Her Majesty was smiling broadly as she arrived at an arena close to Windsor Castle, with the audience spontaneously cheering as she walked to the royal box. The week-long equestrian event kicked off Platinum Jubilee celebration, marking the monarch's 70-year reign. Ukraine's Eurovision Song Contest winners say they'll celebrate their success after the war. Kalush Orchestra beat the UK's entry after receiving hundreds of points through the public vote. The group says the victory was for every Ukrainian. On TV, online and on your radio via DAB+, you're with GB News. And now, more from Mark Dolan tonight.
Welcome to Mark Dolan tonight. In just a second, my Mark Meets guest is a true British national treasure, comedian, actor, presenter and much more, Christopher Biggins. In the news agenda with my panel, we'll be asking, was Britain robbed at last night's Eurovision? And we'll put that question to former Eurovision winner Jay Aston of Bucks Fizz. She's live on the programme at 10:20. It's also International Family Day. What do you think of your family? Are you close to your family? Is the family still important? Plus, another great British game show tonight based around famous families. Also, how often should you wash your hair? We'll discuss that and other burning issues of the day. A busy hour to come. Let's kick off with Mark Meets. It is time now for Mark Meets, in which I speak to the biggest names in the world of politics, showbiz, sport and beyond. Tonight, the very definition of a British national treasure. Actor, comedian, raconteur, presenter and, of course, panto icon Christopher Biggins. Destined for a life on the stage, a 17-year-old Biggins took the lead role at the age of just 17, as I say, in a production of Molière's entertaining farce Le Médecin Malgré Lui. The rest was history. There followed a 5-decade-long career on the small and big screen. In Upstairs, Downstairs, Porridge, Whatever Happened to the Likely Lads, Some Mothers Do Have 'Em, I, Claudius, Minder and many more. Christopher memorably hosted Surprise, Surprise, a show featuring emotional family reunions alongside another TV legend, the late great Cilla Black. Having made his mark in acting and presenting, it was just a matter of time before reality TV would come a-knocking, and Biggins demonstrated his enduring popularity by comfortably winning I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here in 2007. Since then, Celebrity MasterChef, Celebrity The Chase, Celebrity Come Dine With Me, Celebrity Big Brother, you name it, he's done it. And following a long and glorious career in panto, in 2017, he received a Lifetime Achievement Award at the Great British Pantomime Awards. We're talking showbiz royalty, folks, and it's my huge honour and delight to welcome Christopher Biggins to GB News. Biggins, welcome.
Mark, how lovely to see you. Can I ask you a question? Can I start off? How often do you wash your hair?
Every day.
No, you're lying.
Well, I normally wash it every day, and then I didn't wash it today. I asked Mrs. Dolan, do I need to? She said no. I realise it's a disaster.
Yeah, it is a bit of a disaster.
But I think it's a scorched earth policy by Mrs. Dolan.
We'll have a go at her then.
Polly Middlehurst, our brilliant news anchor, thinks that she wants to make sure I'm not attractive to other women. I think that box was ticked long ago, Christopher.
I love it.
Christopher, it's great to see you in the studio and in fine fettle. I'm really, really well. It's wonderful to see you. I also want to talk about the rest of your career because there's so much more to come. I know that. You've got so much energy, so much enthusiasm. But can we start at the beginning? Did you have acting aspirations as a child?
Not really. What happened was I was born in Oldham, outside Manchester, a place called Royton.
You kept the accent,
I kept the accent, but my mother hated it up there. So after 3 weeks, she bundled me into a Pickford's lorry with my father, wrapped me in cotton wool, which I still have an aversion to this day, and the van drove us down to Salisbury, because she was a Hampshire hog and she was from Southampton. That's where the Hampshire bit came in.
Oh, I see.
So what happened was then we set up home in Salisbury and I went to school and we had I had a great Auntie Vi who was a terrible snob. And I, by this time, was not talking Northern. I was talking with a Wiltshire accent, a country boy, as all my family were. And my aunt hated it, so she insisted I have elocution lessons, which is why I speak so wonderfully to this day. And the woman who gave me elocution lessons was Mrs. Christian, and she saw something in me, and a spark, and she encouraged it. And I had also a music teacher who taught me the piano, and so badly, because I can only play Daffodil Dale to this day. And they encouraged me, and we did all sorts of wonderful things at school. But then what happened was Salisbury had one of the great repertory companies in the country. And it was... I went to see Mr. Salzberg, who ran the theatre. I said, can I have a job? He said, you can come for 2 weeks. I went for 2 weeks and I stayed 2 years.
What age were you when you approached
16 and a half.
That rep company? So that's when it officially began at 16 and a half. Began your career. And were you an extrovert as a child? Were you a natural performer? Were you the funny kid in the class?
I think possibly I was. I had a best friend called John Brown. And we used to go on cross-country runs, which, of course, John and I hated. And we used to make them into walks. And the other boys were furious because they had to wait for us to come back. And we used to come back laden with Flora.
Who's she?
We used to pick on the way back home. And so we were considered to be the jokers.
Biggins, the inventor of the cross-country stroll.
Exactly. Oh, it was lovely.
And school plays as well, I would have thought.
Yes, we did lots of school plays, and it was really good fun. And Salisbury was fantastic because they were the good old days where, sadly, they don't happen now, and young kids can't train. They can go to drama school, but they can't learn about theatre, which is so important, and repertory companies now don't exist. I mean, after 2 years of what we've been through with the pandemic, I mean, theatre hardly exists, and it's still in a bad way.
Devastating. All of those skills that have been lost because whether it's actors or indeed directors, lighting people, sound and tech guys, they've had to go and get other jobs, haven't they?
Yes. And it's I mean, for instance, in New York, they were given billions and billions of dollars by the government to survive. We were given nothing. In our
even Andrew Lloyd Webber had ran into financial problems.
Oh, and Cameron McIntosh. It's been terrible because they put on these big shows, and what we need is an audience, and the audience is tourists, and the tourists haven't come back. So what's suffering? Theatre, restaurants, everything else that revolves around that entertainment.
So what kind of childhood did you have, theatre and performing aside? Was it a happy childhood?
Oh, I was very, very lucky. I was an only child. Until when I left home at 18 and a half years, 2 years after being at Salisbury Rep. And I was an only child, and I was very proud of being an only child. And my mother, I was going to Bristol Vic Theatre School, and my mother announced as I was leaving home, she said, by the way, I'm pregnant. And I said, don't be so stupid. I mean, the thought of one's parents still doing it was appalling.
Absolutely.
And I've got a younger brother who is divine, but he's not like a brother, he's like a friend. Yeah. And he's terrific, and he has, 2 lovely children, and I adore, and so it's...
And he's not in showbiz, he's a civilian with a proper job.
Driver.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, which is great. He's just become that.
Yeah.
And he's lovely. I mean, but, you know, I don't really know him as a brother because I was away.
Was there a career master plan for you?
No, never. I just enjoyed what I did, and you know, and I never thought about anything about how I was going to do it, or it just all fell into place. I mean, I was very lucky, and people come to me for advice now about going into this business, and I always say, don't do it. And then I say, however, if you want to do it, it's a hard job, and it's not anything to do with talent. Talent doesn't come in; it's being in the right place at the right time, and I think I've proved that in the 50-odd years, you know, and it's just gone from. And, you know, you mentioned the jungle. I mean, people say to me, what is the greatest thing you've ever done in your career? Well, I've done wonderful comedy shows. I've done wonderful dramas like I, Claudius and Poldark, all those sort of things. But my greatest achievement is I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here.
A reminder that the great British public love Biggins.
Well, that was the thing that really got me. I mean, I was absolutely so touched. And I was in the final with a model called Janice Dickinson from America.
Very glamorous lady.
Yeah, and hideous too. And she was convinced she'd won. And it was wonderful. There were the two of us sort of side by side. And she was ready to take the title, and she didn't take the title. I took it, and she was furious with me. So she left immediately Australia and went back to America. Sour grapes. But anyway, it was the most. And to this day, I will never forget the public who was so wonderful.
Well, that's right. You were up against Katie Hopkins, Rodney Marsh, the ex-football player, the actress Gemma Atkinson. You didn't hit it off with Janice, but what about the rest of the group?
Oh, they were lovely. Keris Matthews, who was fantastic. We all got on and said we had such a laugh, I can't tell you. And it is a wonderful experience.
Yeah. So did you think twice about going on? Because you must have spoken to your agent and thought, am I going to do this? This could backfire horribly.
Well, the boys, Ant and Dec, who are such stars, I mean, they're wonderful guys, and they were always very keen to have me in it. And they always asked me when I was going to do pantomime, so I could never do it. Yeah. So one year they asked me in January, I finished the pantomime, they said, would you do it next year? So I said, oh, I might as well. And, lovely Barbara Windsor then.
Did you struggle in the jungle at all?
No, not at all. I loved every moment of it.
But what about the sleep deprivation, the
spiders?
spiders?
I slept the best I've ever slept in my life.
Really?
I mean, I slept out in the open air in a sort of tree house, and I remember the first night thinking to myself, now, what is going to crawl over me? And after I thought that thought, I just went fast asleep. And it happened every single night. I had the best sleep ever. It was wonderful.
I could talk to you all night about the people that you've worked with, other legends. Cilla Black, she was a very, very good friend of yours, and you co-hosted Surprise, Surprise. So this was, you know, you keep reinventing yourself every decade or so. You became a TV presenter of the 80s. Surprise, Surprise reunited family members with each other. It was a very human show, very joyful. Cilla Black, they don't make them like that anymore, do they?
They certainly don't. I mean, she was fantastic, and we hit it off immediately. And because she was such a star, she had to have a new dress every show, which meant I had to have, this is good old days of television when there was money around, I had to have a suit. And so she introduced me to Tommy Nutter, who was a wonderful, wonderful suit maker. I mean, marvellous man. And Doug Hayward. So I had all these suits. Yeah. You know, it was wonderful.
Doug Hayward made suits for Michael Caine.
He did, absolutely.
So did you get a new suit every week?
Every week, and shoes that were handmade for me. Shirts that were handmade. I mean, it was another life.
It was a golden era of TV entertainment, ITV. Was it LWT who made Surprise, Surprise?
It was, LWT.
Massive show. And so you did... And, of course, the sitcoms. I mean, you worked with... You starred in Porridge. Some mothers do Avon, Whatever Happened to the Likely Lads. Where do you start? David Jason, Ronnie Barker... I mean, tell me about working with Ronnie Barker, because we knew the comedian, we didn't know the man.
Ronnie Barker was one of the most extraordinary men because he was a huge star. You know, I mean, him and the two Ronnies were huge. Then he went off to do a lot of other things, Ronnie Barker, as did Corbett. But what was wonderful about Ronnie was if he felt one of his lines was better said by someone else. And bearing in mind, Dick Clement and Ian Lafrene had written these lines, with the greatest comedy writers ever, he would give it to you because he was looking at the whole show. He wasn't looking egotistically at his own performance. He was so generous, and I think that shows in what it ended up as a great comedy series, and still to this day is on television. I mean, you know, in those days we used to get 20 million viewers. Now, it's ridiculous.
And also, he was a generous performer because, in many ways, as it was Fletcher, his character, wasn't it, in Porridge, he was to a degree the straight man, actually.
Yes.
And it was a lot of the others that were sort of, you know, the bonkers characters around him. But of course, he demonstrated that selflessness in The Two Ronnies too by being an unnamed or an uncredited writer.
That's right.
On The Two Ronnies.
Yeah, he was very clever.
Yeah.
I think he wrote the famous sketch...
Four Candles.
Four Candles. I think he wrote that.
Amazing. Yeah, that's something I've heard. Look, you've never been overly focused on politics in your career, but you were an admirer of Margaret Thatcher.
I certainly was. I'm a Conservative. I don't mind anybody knowing it.
Did you have to keep that quiet at certain points in your career?
Yes, I did. And I think, you know, I always attach I'm Conservative to the left. Because, you know, there's a lot of things going on at the moment which aren't good. You know, the fact that we have food banks, that we have people worried about whether they're going to pay their electricity and gas, all those sort of things. There's a lot wrong with our country, but then every country is wrong.
You're a one-nation Tory, a Tory wet, if you like.
Absolutely. Yes, I like that. That's a very good term. But, I mean, I did meet Margaret Thatcher, and Margaret Thatcher was the most extraordinary woman ever.
I think you said that she had principle and conviction, but also you admired the showbiz factor too, that she had presence.
Yes, oh, absolutely. And I remember when, towards the end of her life, she was not Prime Minister, because, of course, like all Prime Ministers, they don't know how to finish it. You know, they go downhill radically. But anyway, I was at a memorial service for Charles Forte at Westminster Abbey, and I could see her approaching, and she had a man with her, and I heard him say, Christopher Biggins, actor. She went, Christopher, how lovely. I mean, it was so brilliant. What a technique.
Yeah. So she's as much of a lovey as anyone else.
Oh, my God, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, and she turned it on for you.
Turned it on and, of course, made me feel wonderful that she remembered my name, but I heard him say Christopher Biggins, actor, but it didn't matter.
And staying on politics, you've been in, you know, some of the most admired sitcoms of all time. What are your thoughts on so-called political correctness now, or wokeism, cancel culture, trigger warnings at the beginning of episodes of Fawlty Towers?
Don't even talk to me about it. My blood boils. I mean, why do we have to have this? And it's for a minority of people. You know, I'm not
sure it's for anyone. I've never met anyone that is triggered by Fawlty Towers.
I agree. And also, how would Benny Hill go down nowadays? Or, you know, Dick Emery.
Benny Hill would probably be burned at the stake.
I think he would, you're right. But he was funny.
Correct.
And we all laughed.
And actually, the male characters in Benny Hill were the butt of the joke.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, this Carry On film's the same thing.
Absolutely. Lovely Barbara Windsor, you know, the star of all those films.
Another good friend of yours, Barbara.
Yes, and Kenneth Williams. I mean, they would have been no careers at all, would they have had?
We will talk about Eurovision after the break,
yes.
And you've been kind enough to stay for us. We're going to chat with Jay Aston from Bucks Fizz. But Wogan, of course, made the Eurovision in this country because of his witty commentary. You worked with Terry for a long time. Just before we came on air, we both used the word genius.
Oh, I mean, he was definitely a genius, and he knew how to handle people. I mean, like Graham does. I mean, Graham Norton is a brilliant chat. He's the best chat host we have. And he's wonderful for the Eurovision Song Contest. He's very, very funny. Yeah. Witty, quick, I mean, everything. But that was what Terry Wogan was. I mean, he was a good teacher, Terry, if you listen to Terry. And of course, he never did any homework. Yeah. That, which I think is great, you know. He just knew what to talk about, and it never, ever failed him.
And were there two Terrys? I mean, was it, you know, what you see is what you get, or did he have a private side?
No, it was what you saw is what you got. I mean, his wife is lovely. He has lovely sons, and one of them has a pizza chain of restaurants. Well, I hope he does, because, of course, the restaurant business is gone downhill. So
I met his son, and that's right. Really, Mark, I think
yes.
It's Mark Wogan, a really talented chef and restaurateur, a pizza chain, as you say. I think he was doing. I met him halfway through lockdown, and he was doing deliveries and, you know, orders from home and things like that. So let's hope he prevailed.
Yes.
But very fond memories of his dad as well.
Yeah, well, you know, he was a real icon. I mean, he was fantastic, Terry.
I think so. Well, before we get to the break. A quick word on politics. How do you rate Boris Johnson?
Well, I used to like him very much, and I still do, because there's no one else to take over, in my view. You know, there's no other political party, I don't think. There's no individual, I can say, in the Conservative Party who I'd like to see. And, you know, he is doing the best he can. I mean, you know, he's trying... Partygate sends me twisted round the room. I can't bear it if they go on and on about that, because...
Well, also, they didn't invite Biggins.
No, but, you know, they keep bringing that up, and he's got so many more things to do.
And then Starmer falls flat on his face with his own Beergate scandal.
I
So
know,
they're as bad as each other, aren't they?
They all are.
And what about Brexit? Were you, I mean, a personal question, but did you support Brexit?
I did, and I also have friends who absolutely say to me, you made the wrong decision, who are business people who are suffering. But other business people are thriving. You know, I rang a dear friend of mine, Anthony Bamford, Lord Bamford of JCB, and he was very pro it. And for all the right reasons, and he's, you know, but other people I know have suffered.
Well, I voted Remain, but I think it looks to have been a good idea now, whether it was the vaccine rollout or trade deals with other countries. Our sovereignty is back, and also it's a democracy.
Yes.
People voted to leave.
Absolutely.
And I think there would have been a democratic crisis, possibly even a civil unrest, if the decision had been overturned.
And you can't ignore that. I mean, that was the decision.
The will of the people. The will of the people. And last but not least, before the break, the Queen.
Yes.
The ultimate showbiz figure, who is not in the best of health, but you were just saying actually how fantastic she looked today.
Yes, at the Windsor Castle for the horse show.
Yeah, brilliant.
And it's very interesting, she didn't turn up at the House of Lords the other day, but she was there for the horses. And she hates theatre. Absolutely hates theatre.
Right?
Yeah, I met her one of the first times I met her, I was doing Regent's Park Open Air Theatre, and I was playing Puck in A Midsummer Night's Dream. In fact, I was the best Puck in the park that year. And
so I've heard.
What happened was that she wouldn't come and see it because it was too big. So we put on a special production, a George Bernard Shaw, that's right, play, which was about Shakespeare meeting Queen Elizabeth I. And it was a 20-minute play, and it was perfect. But I was chosen to meet her in my dressing room. Now, the dressing room was no bigger than your desk. In fact, your desk is bigger than my dressing room. So she came in, and Philip had to stand in the doorway with David Conville, and who was the manager of the theatre, and ran the theatre. And there was me. And so David said, this is Christopher Biggins, Mum, who plays Puck, and also, I play something else. Anyway, she said, how lovely. I said, well, it is lovely, Mum, because, you know, and these are the costumes, and I showed her the costume. I was talking rubbish. And these are cards, greeting cards, which people send you on the first night. And I went on and on and on. Poor woman sat, you know, or stood there in disbelief what I was talking about. All of a sudden, she said, and what are those? And she pointed to some shoes, Puck shoes, and I brought them down. I said, these are Puck shoes. And she turned to Philip and said, look, Philip, Puck shoes. Whereupon I screamed with laughter. There's this wonderful picture of me laughing and her looking very po-faced. But she has a wonderful sense of humour.
Just brilliant. You've met her several times,
yes.
and only happy memories. Wonderful stuff. Well, she's the Queen of the United Kingdom. You're the King of Showbiz, and you've been kind enough to stick around because we're going to talk about Eurovision in our news agenda. Christopher will contribute to that conversation alongside a former Eurovision winner, Jay Aston from Bucks Fizz. We'll be asking, was Britain robbed last night in Eurovision, or do we acknowledge the importance of a message to the Ukrainian people that we've got their back? What do you think? We'll talk Eurovision. Also in the news agenda with my panel, some other burning issues of the day, very important, including does the family still matter? Are you close to your family? Mark at GBnews.uk. And another game show as well. Don't go anywhere.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Well, lots more to come in this hour, including another great British game show before 11. It's International Family Day, so we'll be asking whether you can recognise the families of certain celebrities. And also, we're going to talk families with my panel. Does the family still matter? How close are you to your family? However, let's talk about last night now. Despite having won it 5 times, the Eurovision Song Contest has been a bit of a challenge for the UK in recent years. But that certainly wasn't the case last night. However, Ukraine were crowned overall champions. And I had the pleasure of interviewing their lead singer a few weeks ago on this channel. I'm delighted for them. Who could begrudge the Ukraine that win? But were the UK the real winners? They finished second with a stellar performance from Sam Ryder. He even finished first in the jury vote, which of late is unheard of. Take a look. The public vote didn't go so well, with most of the points heading in Ukraine's direction. Understandable, perhaps. And a clear sign of Europe throwing their support behind Ukraine with the ongoing war against Russia. But were Britain robbed tonight? To discuss this, showbiz legend Christopher Biggins. And I'm delighted to be joined now via Skype by a very special guest indeed, a great talent, a former winner of Eurovision with Bucks Fizz, Jay Aston. Hi, Jay.
Hi, Mark. How are you doing?
Really well, great to see you. Did you watch Eurovision last night?
Oh, of course. With my Union Jack hat on all the way.
First of all, what did you think?
I'm so thrilled.
What did you think of the British song and the British performance?
I thought it was excellent. I've actually been saying this for days. I thought for the first time in decades we had a chance to get in like the top 5. But to come second, I mean, it's absolutely amazing. What a comeback. Literally, we were last year, and we've been down in the dumps literally since the mid-90s. So I'm just delighted. I think it was the perfect result for Ukraine to come first. I really do, you know, to show them support. I mean, their equivalent to Graham Norton was announcing it from a bunker, you know, for goodness sake. I just think it was amazing that everybody voted and gave them that bit of support. They really need it.
Of course, we absolutely support Ukraine, but you'd be slightly gutted, wouldn't you? I mean, if you were Bucks Fizz and you're in the final and, you know, you're pipped to the post by another country, it's got to hurt.
Well, I think under the circumstances, people will understand that. And I think Sam was exactly the right guy. He's such a lovely bloke, such a nice guy. And the things he said, he just brought a great new energy to it. And I'm sure it will launch him. You know, I mean, I've had a career for many decades off the back of Eurovision in the early 80s. And I think Sam's going to be a star. I think we're going to see a lot more of him. We've now got TAP Management involved who put the whole thing together. They took it out of the hands of BMG, which I think has been a huge plus. And I think they'll have a career lined up for him.
Yes, well, you're in that rare aristocracy of musicians that have had great careers after Eurovision, alongside Lulu, Cliff Richard, ABBA and others. Christopher, what do you think? Was Britain robbed last night?
It was quite right that Ukraine won. I mean, it was fantastic. And I thought the song they did was wonderful. I thought that they had energy. And if they hadn't won, I'd have been very surprised. But yes, we were robbed because he was brilliant, Sam. I mean, you know, wonderful. But at least we came second. You know, which is something, because we failed miserably for so many years. And well done, you know. I mean, I think next year we can go for it. And I was encouraged politically that the other voters thought that we had something, which is very important.
Biggins, have we been forgiven for Brexit?
No. Well, we're just, I think, you know, I mean, it's a difficult one because, you know, Brexit had put everyone's backs up in Europe and everyone hated us. That's why we weren't winning. But no, I think that was a good sign.
What changed in terms of the judges? Why do you think they swung behind the UK? Why did they hold their noses and give the Brits 12 points, considering that they're furious we've left the EU?
Who's that to?
Well,
to you, Chris.
Oh, me.
Yeah, I'm going to give you the hard political ones.
Well, I think because they, you know, I think at the end of the day, Sam did a brilliant job. It was a wonderful song. He did it superbly. The energy was wonderful. The set was fun. Everything about it. He was still. He was, you know, concentrating. It was a brilliant.
So he was so good that his performance transcended and neutralised the politics, Christopher.
Yes. I think also Europe is probably now fed up with politics. You know, I think they want to get on with life. And, you know, let's entertain people, which Sam did.
I wonder whether they were just confused, Jay, and thought he was the Swedish entry.
He does. He looks very Scandi, doesn't he? I think he's just a likeable guy. You know, he's got such a great personality.
Yeah.
He's the people's people, you know. He's just inoffensive and just really seems such a nice guy. But he's got an amazing voice. And he delivered on the night. So, you know, I just take my hat off him.
And lovely teeth.
Well, I think, I'm not going to exaggerate here, I think that it was one of the very best performances of a British artist at Eurovision in the history of the competition. I'm thinking of Bucks Fizz, Making Your Mind Up. I'm thinking of ABBA with Waterloo. I think that one is up there. He didn't quite make it, but we know why. He's sort of, you know, number two brackets number one, if we take the historical context into account. What I think he did last night is what you did in the early 80s at Eurovision, Jay, which is he really went for it.
Yeah, well, you have to. You've got 3 minutes to change your life. And he's definitely just changed his life. I think there's a big career for him ahead of him. And it's how you deliver it on the night. But what normally happens is you do so many rehearsals, you do so much promotion, that by the time you get on the stage, you're exhausted. But he knew what to do. I think he's a pro. I think he knows what he's doing.
Yeah, Christopher, you are a consummate theatre and television performer, and it takes a certain talent to turn it on at exactly the right moment. Not everyone can do that.
No, it takes a real professional. It's like, for instance, knowing where the camera is, you know, knowing where that light is lit, you know, playing to that camera, playing to the audience at home, playing to the audience all around the world. I mean, it is a technique which is brilliant, and he did it brilliantly. I think he deserved to win, but I think he probably was rooting for the winner of last night.
I'm sure that's right, and I agree with you, Jay. A massive career beckons for this young man. In fact, he might do even better having come second. I'm pretty sure that One Direction didn't win the X Factor and they became the biggest band in the world at one point. So it's not always about top spot, it's about making a splash and being seen. Let's talk about some of the other entries. Ukraine and the UK, of course, did very well. But there were some other highlights. Viewers entertained perhaps for the wrong reasons. Here are a couple of more bizarre entries. Take a look at Norway's Subwoofler.
Yes.
More fitting on the masked singer, perhaps. Let's take a look at that.
This was most bizarre, wasn't it?
It was a bit, slightly dystopian.
Yeah.
Well, I guess they're COVID secure. They're all wearing masks. Yeah, a bit spooky. And this is Finland. The yellow balloons. A little bit surreal.
An attractive look, isn't it?
I think so. They've been on the Finnish vodka. They've got the balloons. And this is, last but not least, Serbia. Nurse Ratched there. Hand washing routine.
Is she delivering a baby?
Seems like it. Each to their own. Well, there you go. They didn't quite make it, but I'm delighted to say alongside Jay Aston and Christopher Biggin, we've got my fantastic panel of political commentator Emma Webb, Tommy Sandu, broadcaster, and Hattie McAndrew, who is a lifestyle coach. Hattie McAndrews, let me start with you. Does Eurovision still matter?
I've got to be really honest, I've actually never watched it. I know, I feel that's really scandalous.
Oh, this is terrible. Get off that panel.
I know, I think I've got the wrong audience here. So I can't comment whether it's still relevant, but I'm thrilled that Ukraine run. Those ones you just showed, they're creative, they're fun, interesting. You know, it's good to have a bit of entertainment, isn't it?
Biggins, I wonder whether the allure of Eurovision is generational.
I think it is, but I think I didn't do it this year, but usually I go to places like the Ivy Club and host an evening of Eurovision, and the young audience simply love it. They bet on who's going to win, they laugh, we do a lot of laughing, because, of course, a lot of the acts are laughable. I mean, look, the ones you've just shown were hysterical. I mean, the masks, what was that all about? But it is a fun occasion. We all sit round the television, we all have a glass of wine, we have a bit of pizza. It's a wonderful tradition, and I think it's alive and well and will live forever. Unlike, of course, Miss World, which I think that's dull.
Yeah, I agree. It's definitely dated, isn't it? Tommy Sandu, Eurovision, does it matter?
No, it doesn't matter. But also, Chris has got me thinking now. We should combine Miss World and Eurovision, like just beautiful-looking women just singing ridiculous songs in crazy outfits. There's something in that, Chris, and you could host it. And by the way, Chris, there's no young people in the Ivy. They're all of your generation, right? There's no youngsters hanging out there. We have so many talent shows. That's the problem. We have so many singing shows that I think Eurovision can get somewhat lost in that. But it's bonkers, it's bizarre, it's not a serious music show. It always operates on two levels, on a political level and on a sort of a singing competition level. Ukraine won the political one. We lost last year on a political one. And I think on our merit and on a great song, we've won this year. We did win. But also, like I said, Sam, he radiates this kind of light. He's got this light that Jay's got the light. Look at the light. I don't know if it's uplighting where she is right now, but look at her. She's radiant on that screen. There's something that star quality has, and he's got it, Jay's got it, and good luck to him and his career going forward.
Well, that's right. Jay's actually going to tear her skirt off in just a second. But because we need to... I mean, briefly on the politics of this, Emma Webb, this is your area of expertise. We received maximum points from France and Germany. Something's afoot.
This is a really interesting one because, and I have to confess, I actually don't really watch Eurovision either, but I do watch some of the entries, particularly our own. And as one of Sam Ryder's probably 2 million followers that he has on social media, I think it's great that he's essentially won, even though he's in second place. But what's really interesting about this is that there is a question over whether maybe in the same way that Ukraine was placed first because of political reasons, perhaps the points that we got from France and from Germany suggest that maybe in political terms, that possibly one of the reasons why we placed so highly this year is because of Boris Johnson's support for Ukraine and because of the comments made by Zelensky about Boris Johnson. And so actually, possibly, aside from Sam Ryder being an incredible voice, it may also be that we've done well this year on a political basis, which could be interesting in terms of redeeming our reputation as global Britain going forward amongst our European counterparts.
There's a rumour, too, that Macron will be singing next year's song for France, which I think would be wonderful. He can go on with that hairy chest.
Yes.
Show it to us all and we'll all vote for him.
Oh, definitely. 12 points for Monsieur Macron, as long as he stays out of politics.
Exactly.
That's fine by me. Jay, before we go, can you just tell me what your emotions are like on the day of Eurovision when you're just preparing to go on stage with tens, if not hundreds of millions of people watching around the world? It's a live show. Just tell me what's going through your head.
Well, it is nerve-wracking, but you have to dig deep and you have to just focus on the job in hand. So you've got, the 3 minutes to change your life. That's what the record company tells you. That's what you know is going to happen. You've just got to, be professional and try and enjoy it, because at the end of the day, it is a bit of fun. You can't really take it seriously. You've got to just focus on the job in hand and enjoy it. And I think that comes across on the camera. And, it's just for us, it was a fabulous bit of fun and changed our lives. It was just a great moment.
Yes, well, I love all four of you. You're all legends in my book, and you went on to have such a successful career as recording artists. You sold millions of records, and you've given so much pleasure to this country. We love Bucks Fizz, and I think my brilliant producer, Tom, has sourced a clip of Bucks Fizz in action, making TV and music history.
Oh, look at that.
Just joyous, happy days. We got the skirt, we got Jay, and we got Cheryl and the gang. Just fabulous. Can't get too much of that. Jay, wonderful to see you. Come and see us in the studio soon. Also, thanks so much to Christopher Biggins. Chris, great to talk about your career. So much more to come. I can't wait for your next adventures, whether it's in Panto, on TV. And, of course, you're a regular contributor to GBNews as well. Always great to see you on with Eamon Holmes and with Dan Wootton. My thanks again to Christopher Biggins. Well, lots more to get through. Another great British game show. Plus, how often should you wash your hair? And we'll talk about family values. Has the family been ignored? Does it still matter? We'll discuss that straight after this break.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
You know, yeah.
Brilliant stuff. Well, reacting to the big stories of the day is lifestyle coach Hattie McAndrews, podcast and TV presenter Tommy Sandu, and political commentator Emma Webb. So you thought Russia's nuclear missiles were scary. What about until they get their dolphins out? Their military is attaching knives and pistols to the heads of specially trained dolphins to fight off Ukrainian divers seeking to sabotage Russian warships. It's also reported that these deadly dolphins can be used to search for mines and plant bombs on enemy ships. That's right, dolphins now being used as military weapons by Russia. Sounds like April Fool's, but it's not. This is not the first time animals have been used in warfare. We have napalm bats. In the Second World War, the United States plotted to use exploding bats against the Japanese. We've had photographing pigeons. As early as 1908, the German army attached cameras to pigeons to take aerial photographs. In the First World War, one feathered spy even won the French Croix de Guerre for heroic service during the Battle of Verdun before she was later shot and probably eaten. There have been acoustic cats. During the Cold War, the CIA planned to fit felines with microphones and radio transmitters, but the project was abandoned after one such cat was run over by a taxi during a test run. So there you go. Wonderful stuff. All of our animals have made a contribution, haven't they, to war? But the mind boggles what they'll think of next. Let's talk about washing your hair, shall we? James Corden has revealed he only washes his hair every 2 months. The Gavin and Stacey star was talking about residents in LA being asked to cut down their shower use. That's right, LA is running out of water, so it's like, don't have a shower. He said on his Late Late Show that he's in and out of the shower in 3 or 4 minutes, and he uses soap, but does not wash his hair, washing his locks every 2 months. It begs the question, is hygiene overrated? Hattie, the Americans think of us Brits as a bit stinky. Did you know that? That's our reputation.
I do know that, yeah. I don't think that hygiene can ever really be overrated, can it? I think that showering is good and washing your hair is good, and like a basic level of hygiene is important.
Well, you know that Australian joke about Brits? They call us poms, don't they?
Yeah.
And the Australian joke is, where does a pom hide his wallet? Under the towel. That's right. The idea is the towel never gets lifted. You know, and so we are, you know, possibly a little bit whiffy. But I mean, hair itself. You see, the problem is that sometimes it's a drag. I mean, Tommy, you don't have this problem.
No,
with
I don't.
Washing your hair.
But I want you to know, every now and then I do use shampoo. Just because of, you know, nostalgia.
You're worth it.
Just to remember the feeling. Sometimes I just need to take my missus' shampoo, the Pantene.
All right, well, I'm going to assume, Hattie, that you would shower once a day. Is that
the correct assumption, yeah.
And how would you feel if loved ones showered once a week or twice a week?
I would not be OK with that.
Really?
No, I really wouldn't.
Because back in the day, families would share a bath, not simultaneously, I hasten to add, but you'd have generations of a family, and by the time the baby goes in there, it'd be like disgusting bath water.
Yeah.
But that was a weekly occurrence. You know, in the old days, people did just wash once a week.
I think, though, like so many of these things, these discussions, we've moved on, and I think maybe when there was like limited water and people were, you know, washing their clothes in their baths and doing all these other things, fine. But we're very lucky if we have access to showers that we should shower and we should look after ourselves. And, you know, self-care, if you want to wash your hair every day, wash your hair every day.
Yeah, just go for it. Emma, I think the Americans take too many showers, because I've got relatives in America and they take 2 or 3 showers a day.
That can't be good for you. Especially if you're washing your hair, if you're showering that much, it's going to dry your skin out and all sorts of things. But I think showering once a day is the acceptable. You know, maybe once every 2 days, perhaps if you don't want to wash your hair. But I think it's pretty disgusting if you don't shower every day.
So really, it's a shower a day for you. You famously have hair that makes you look like you just stepped out of the salon.
Do I?
In fact, could you do that thing they do in adverts? Yeah. Just sort of shake it like that, as does Hattie, I'm delighted to say. You put Tommy and I to shame. In fact,
Let me-
even Tommy,
There you go, there you go.
Tommy looks significantly
I've
better.
always wanted to do that.
Yeah.
You know they do that?
CGI.
That's what you're doing in the shower.
Or have a bit of fringe in my fringe in my eyes. I'm jealous of a fringe in my eyes.
You're rocking the Bruce Willis look.
Thanks, man.
But Emma, so it's generational. I mean, our parents, I would say, generation washed less than we did.
I mean, not within my family. My parents
Is that
shower
right?
once a day.
I'm glad to hear the webs. I'm glad to hear the webs are hygienic. Well, let's stick on the subject of families because it's International Day of Families, established by the UN in 1993 as a way of raising awareness of issues faced by families throughout the world. But the question is, does the family still matter? The family unit has changed a lot, hasn't it, Emma? Have we sort of, you know, has it lost its influence on the way society runs, the existence of a family?
I think that the recent ONS statistics are really troubling, that it shows this kind of atomisation of society, more people living on their own, disjointed from the old traditional nuclear family.
Mum and dad, 2 kids, or maybe even grandparents as well.
Yeah, and I think that when we were talking about this, you know, before we came on air, that particularly amongst people of ethnic minority backgrounds, the family values in those families is far more respected, particularly the role of the mother seems to be more respected, whereas I think that actually amongst society in general, and this is borne out by the statistics, it suggests that primary institution that keeps society stable and actually allows for a smaller government, because it is the first building block of society, is becoming eroded, and I think that's a very troubling thing.
I've just got a few seconds on this, guys, but Tommy, you're a big family man, aren't you?
Hugely, and my parents actually live round the corner, and even that's like, oh, why don't they live with you? You know, it's like, but they're like 4 minutes away. But family values, like Emma said, respect for the elderly. There's so much that comes from being in a family and having a tight family. They're supporting you. They can get you through tough times, not only financially, mentally, having people that inspire you in the family, older brothers and sisters, even have the mickey taken out on you by your siblings, I think makes you stronger, makes you ready for life.
All about, and you're
bullying, that's what we need.
all about well-being, and the family's a part of that, isn't it, Hattie?
It is, of course, but I think a really good thing about moving away from that traditional concept of a family, mum, dad, 2 kids, is that, you know, we have freedom to choose our family to a certain extent, and I think that that's an amazing thing. There's blended families, divorce is so normal now, parents getting remarried, there's step siblings, you know, it's not as common to have the mum and dad and the kids, so I think that it's a new way of life, and I think it's inclusive, and I think it's important that that's recognised and it's celebrated, and it's not so much a bad thing.
So we've got families, it's just they've changed, they look different, and of course, for some people, their friends is their family.
Yeah, exactly.
And then that's just as valuable. Brilliant stuff. Well, that's the subject of tonight's great British game show, easy for you to say. We're going to celebrate Family Day with a game of We Are Family. Can you at home and my panel here recognise the celebrity family? Let's have a look at this. First of all, we've got a rather political family.
Of course.
Who could that be?
Is it the Kardashians?
Is it Donald Trump?
No, it's Barack.
The Obamas.
Yes, and his family.
I think so. The points go to Tommy there. How about our next family? Who are these guys? We're just going to fire this one up. There you go. A rock family.
The Osbournes.
The Osbournes too, right. OK, next up, sporting family with a bit of pop thrown in.
Beckham.
The Beckhams, nicely done. How about this one, a spooky group?
The Addams family.
Yeah, absolutely love the Addams family. How about our next one? Oh, some tensions. Some slapping.
The infamous Smiths.
The Smiths. OK, another political family.
Kennedys?
Yes, the Kennedys, exactly right. How about...
That's quite horrifying.
How about the Showbiz family?
Oh, who's that?
Chat show host, ITV.
Jonathan Ross.
It is Jonathan Ross and his family. And last, music royalty.
Beside Miley and...
Billy Ray.
Billy Ray, that's it.
You all nailed it, as did my panel. Thank you so much, guys. Please come back soon. And brilliant job, Hattie. Stick around. I'm doing headliners next, and we'll see you soon.
Looking ahead to tomorrow's weather, and the UK looking muggy and rather cloudy with outbreaks of showery rain, locally thundery and moving north. Let's look at the detail. So cloudy, murky and muggy for Monday morning in the southwest of England. A few bright sunny spells, the odd shower possible as well. The southeast of England also feeling muggy, rather cloudy, some early bright or sunny spells and the odd shower. A similar story for South Wales. A murky, muggy feeling with the hill fog patches in places and limited brightness with some showery rain for some. Showery rain also possible across the northwest of England, a rather cloudy start to the day, patchy hill fog and a muggy feel as well to begin the day. Rather cooler in the northeast of England, a little less muggy as a result, but otherwise little change in the expected weather, cloudy with showery outbreaks of rain, heavy as well in some places. Little change in the weather as we move further north to southern Scotland. Another cloudy start to Monday morning, showery outbreaks of rain and locally very heavy. That rain likely to be more persistent across Northern Ireland tomorrow morning. Some heavier bursts also possible, but it will at least be a mild start to the day. So cloud and rain gradually clearing northwards throughout the day, with